Looking for in this show. Here's a pretty amazing drawing. Look at this. This is the Amazon with forest clearing going on, burning the forest to make farmlands in South America. The show was obviously socially conscious, but you can see that this area of the forest has already been cleared with all the trees cut down, but there's still some areas with forest, and the fire is burning, and you can still see the old growth part over here. Tells a whole story in one drawing. And there's the area where the rainforest has been charred and deforested. You can see the smoke still rising, but just beautiful, beautiful composition. Beautiful perspective. We're looking up this direction, we're looking out that direction in the same composition, and it all works. Simplified, because probably these had to be animating elements that a character might push through or something. So he's taking his foliage and making it into simple line drawings that could be animation elements. This is an outer space kind of fantasy sort of a place. Polinia, it says, which is a polluted planet. But if you notice, he's designing outer space foliage. He's mixing what he knows about real world trees, and then coming up with this interesting sweeping canopy off this one tree, and you can see more in the distance. And he's created some very unusual looking things, but it all totally looks correct. I mean, he's created an atmosphere that doesn't exist out of taking bits and pieces of actual foliage and putting it together in an interesting way. Here's a night shot. Another thing is that lighting conditions, the background painter or background layout artist has to indicate for the background painter what lighting conditions he's calling for. This is a moonlit night, so we have the moon and we have a light source, and we have an area for the characters to perform in. Perhaps a car comes driving up the road there. We've got a little town off in the distance. Everything you need to know in this scene is encapsulated in a very simple and very clear composition. This is a hologram on a screen of some sort showing a map of forest paths. So what he's done is he's hit a kind of a middle ground between actually rendering a forest and a path going through a forest, and having a graphic representation of a map of paths and how they go through the forest, and also given it kind of that digitized look of a simplified graphic hologram, sort of three-dimensional feel as well. He's juggling three different concepts at the same time and making them all work. Another great background of a pile of leaves. A thorn thicket. He's working out depth with things in the close foreground so we can see that there are thorns, and then areas in the back with trees. I hope I didn't hit you when I turned the page that time. This is a cave exit. He's indicated moss growing over it and the depth going down. Transylvanian forest. So he's created something that looks kind of beginning to look kind of ominous in the tree trunks, giving them almost like musculature or something. Now the trees are starting to form into human forms. See the arms and the fingers reaching out to grab. bubbling swamp. He's indicated how the animation work. He's showing 1, 2, 3, 4 stages of that bubble popping. Now, one of the things about these two shows that I have to point out at this point is that Widget was more of a realistic show that had a lot of sort of natural history sort of elements. Bogus was more of a cartoony show. It was more in the line of Roger Rabbit and that sort of thing. So here is a Bogus background of a similar sort of thing, and look how he's made it more cartoony. Exact same subject matter that we just saw in the previous background, but here it's much more cartoony looking and less realistic and botanical, I guess is the word for, arboreal is the word. So here's another swamp. I don't know if you can read on the 1080p, but when it says W up in the corner, that's a widget. When it says B, that means it's a Bogus. This is Mount Everest in the Himalayas, and we can see down here he's indicated the scale for the characters. So they're coming down this path and overlooking this vista, and maybe we truck out to the mountains as they arrive. Here's an idea again of showing you how the cartoony version and then the more realistic version. This is a Bogus icebergs, the edge of the ice flows from a Bogus cartoon. And here's a similar sort of a thing from a Widget cartoon. This is really a masterful job of design, because this could be painted in just 3 tones and still look very nice. You don't have to do a million shades of color or gray. You can do it in 3 tones if your design is really good. And he's also encapsulated everything there is about ice flows in the Arctic, with jutting up ice and northern lights and icebergs in the distance in the water. You can totally feel the atmosphere that he's trying to get across. Here's another really nice one. This is an aerial shot that's set at an angle, and we're going from close in. The camera's probably diagonal here, and maybe doing a pan like this as it goes across. But we're starting out with trees in the foreground. The trees get smaller and smaller and smaller until they lead into the city in the distance. And the clouds carry us back. The motion, these clouds carry us back into the distance. Everything is pointing towards that city. Great composition. Pencil mileage. He wasn't afraid of just sitting there and drawing and drawing and drawing and drawing. One of the nice things about Nestor Redondo is that it seems that he can draw just about anything and make it beautiful. Here's a water tower at night, and you can see the characters indicated climbing the water tower. He's worked out an interesting angle to make it give the feeling of height. He's got the moon up there with reflected light. The whole scene, the background painter can look at this and know exactly how to deal with it in color. He's basically an architect. What he's doing is he's designing buildings that don't exist. And he's designing them in just about any style you can possibly want to see them in. One of the things that's interesting is that if you look carefully, his perspective it all looks right, but there isn't a straight line on any of these buildings. Everything is a little bit of a curve. Nothing is exactly parallel or symmetrical. It all has a kind of organic life to it, and it has a bowed out kind of sense, like a fisheye lens. his horizon line is curved, which means that all of his vanishing points, are different for each placement on the curve. So he's eyeballing this perspective. He's got a basic idea of the perspective, but a lot of the actual lines, he's eyeballing it and creating a sense of distortion while he's doing it. And as we go through these drawings, you'll see more brilliant examples of how he does that. This is a great shot, that is the kind of thing you would have seen in a 1950s movie, a stage of staging a small town like this in middle America. Just, he instantly, and again, he's got the light source worked out. We know what time of day it is. This is probably morning, because the light's coming from that direction, and we've got a few shadows. Suburban neighborhood with a high-rise apartment. We've got construction going on over here. He's got little stories going on everywhere in the background. Over here, a character could walk down the sidewalk or come out of this door and walk this direction and around, or they could come out this door, or they could drive up the street from this direction, or they could come from the construction area over here. There's a million ways that characters could interact with this background. Here's a city street from a Bogus cartoon. So now this one is a little more cartoony. Again, notice the curves and how everything is kind of leaning inwards, like a fisheye lens. The telephone poles, everything are all curved, and they're all giving this feeling of almost like rubberiness or cartooniness, a flair to everything. He's indicated it the same background now by just doing a Xerox and then doing blue line over the top, or blue shading over the top to indicate light source for a night shot. Now this is pretty astounding. Look at that. Look at the cars. You could probably name what cars these are. He totally understands what he's doing. He's got a poster up here, and the poster is simplified, but it feels graphically well designed. That's one thing that's really important that people tend to kind of cheat over in cartoons is graphics. The graphics should look to the proper degree of detail for where it appears in the background. It shouldn't be over detailed, and it should feel like it's actually a graphic, not someone handwriting something. That is absolutely perfect because it doesn't draw attention to itself, but it does its job within the function. There's one mistake that Ken, the fellow who donated these to Animation Resources, pointed out, is that if he had approved this one, he would have immediately pointed at that spout on the water tower and said two problems with that. One is that it's not in the proper perspective. The other is that a water tower like that doesn't have a spout. That's the kind of spout you put on a train station water tower that fills steam locomotives. But he said it's okay because it adds a little personality. Now, if you're thinking of how are you going to render a crowded freeway, you think of angles where the cars just fill the screen totally. But this actually feels more crowded because you've got the open space around it to set it off. And you've got things in the distance that they're trying to get to or get away from. This is a really nice composition. Everything all is swirling in this direction that makes your eye follow it. Very nice. City freeway with gridlock. Now here's designed an office building. You could have seen buildings like this in the late 60s. That's I mean, you know exactly what time period you're in. You know that you're probably in an urban setting. You know that it's a public building. All of these things he's able to put across with his design without actually appealing to any kind of stereotype of what an office building looks like. I've never seen an office building that had an entrance like that, but I can totally believe that there could be one.